Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is harvest. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or ways that we use this verb. The first way you might hear harvest used, especially this time of the year, is to mean to gather a crop from a field. So crop being a plant that will be food for either people or animals. A second way, and far less common to hear this verb used, is to mean to catch or kill animals for human use. And so many times that means eating, of course. A third way you might hear harvest used is to mean to remove cells, tissue, or an organ from a person or animal in order for those cells, that tissue, etc., to be transplanted into another person. So again, maybe more common to hear this if you're working in a medical field, especially if you're working with different types of transplanting types of procedures. A fourth way you might hear harvest used is to mean to collect or obtain a resource for use in the future. So one way you might hear harvest used is talking about our natural resources and how we produce energy. I'm going to have an example sentence a little bit later that connects to this fourth definition. You should know that harvest is a regular verb. To make the progressive form, all you need to do is add ing to form harvesting. The past tense and participle forms of this verb can be made by just adding the letters ed. Our base verb, harvest, ends in an unvoiced T sound. So our past tense ending is going to make an id sound, and we're adding an extra syllable as we pronounce it. So it should sound like this: harvested, harvested. Okay. Now, there aren't any additional phrasal verbs that we need to study, so we can focus on practicing using our verb of the day in a couple different verb tenses. Today, we're going to look at the present progressive, also known as the present continuous, or and the simple future. Let's start with the present progressive. We use this verb tense to talk about an action that is happening right now. We also use it to describe an action that is in progress in some time period that is not yet complete. I like calling this verb tense present progressive because I tell my students to look at the two P's in the name here to help them remember they need two parts to make this verb tense in the affirmative. So our first part is going to be to use a present form of be. So if my subject is I, I'll use am. If my subject is you, we, or they, I'll use are. And if my subject is he, she, or it, I'll use is. And then the second part of my verb is the verb with ing. So let's take a look at an example sentence. Iowa farmers are harvesting corn this month. Okay, so in this sentence, I'm describing my home state where I live and an action that is ongoing. This particular month is not complete. This is an action that will be ongoing during the month of October. If I want to make a negative present progressive sentence, my structure is to start with my subject, and then I use the form of be that matches, then not, and then that verb with ing. Here's another example. The local farmer isn't harvesting strawberries now. Okay? So this is not an action that is happening. Right? It's not the right season for strawberries, at least where I live. Finally, we can make a yes or no question in the present progressive. To do this, we start with our form of be, so am, is, are, and then we use our subject, and so our subject needs to agree to that form of be. Then we use the ing form of the verb. Here's another example. Are you harvesting any crops? Right? So are you gathering maybe from your garden, or perhaps you live on a farm and are in that process? Now let's take a look at simple future. Today we're going to focus on making sentences using be going to. Okay? And this form of the future is really common when we're talking about plans. So where we've kind of thought about things we're going to do in the future. Okay? To make a simple future sentence using be going to, I'm going to start with my subject, and then I need to use the present form of be. So it could be am, is, or are. Then I use going to, and then the base verb. Sometimes I have students say, Katie, I get kind of confused with the present progressive and be going to in the future. So the difference is we're adding ing to the verb go, but the action verb in this sentence, or the verb in this sentence, is going to stay in its base form. So you can see that in my example here. The culinary department is going to harvest plants and use them to cook meals for students and teachers. Okay? So here, some future plan is being discussed. Maybe this is a new project for a particular school's culinary department in this upcoming school year. Now let's look at making a negative sentence in the simple future. Our structure here is to start with our subject, and then the form of be that matches, then not, then going to, and the base verb. An example of this, maybe you've heard something like this in a movie or a TV show. They aren't going to harvest anyone's organs. Sometimes in maybe sort of action thriller movies, there might be some sort of component where people are trying to take others' organs for some sinister or evil purpose. Finally, let's look at making a yes or no question in the simple future. To do this, we start with our form of be that matches our subject. Subject comes next, then going to, and the base verb. Here's another example. Are we going to harvest the energy of the sun by installing solar panels? So here's my example sentence that ties back to that fourth definition from earlier in the video about utilizing resources. So here we're talking about energy from the sun in order to make electricity. Now let's spend a moment looking at some words that are related to our verb harvest. The first word we're going to discuss is just the noun form of this word. So same spelling, same pronunciation. And like our verb, this noun can have a few different meanings. The first way you might hear the noun harvest used is to refer to the process or the period where people are gathering in crops. Okay, so an example of this in a sentence might be, are farmers having an early or late harvest this year? So in different parts of our world, there are different time periods where it's considered to be good to gather the crops. A second way, and very much connected here, is when people use the noun harvest, they might be talking about sort of the quantity or the quality of a crop. So sometimes you might hear this called the yield. An example of this might be, our garden had a poor potato harvest this year. So unfortunately, a true statement. We planted a few different sweet potatoes, and I don't think it produced anything. The next word we're going to look at is the noun harvester. This can either refer to a person or a machine that gathers crops during a harvest, right? So during that process. An example of this, you might hear of a farmer or a farming corporation that bought a new harvester this year. So that would be referring to the machine. The last word we're going to take a look at today is the adjective harvestable. And the suffix able always kind of helps us understand the meaning here. So it's going to be able or suitable to be harvested. An example of this might be, there has been an acute shortage of harvestable organs for many years. I saw a statement like this in a recent news article noting that there are many people waiting for transplants, but there haven't been enough or the right kind or right quality in order to be utilized for transplants. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.